Well, it looks like it's Friday. It's Fearless Friday, isn't it? Totally. It's Fearless Friday. And I guess we're going to be fearless all day as we contemplate this weather here in Michigan. It's Fearless Friday. And to be honest with you, it's spring. So I am looking forward to having real spring. You know what I mean? Like springtime weather. Not quite like fall, where you know how fall is, it's a little crisp in the, but spring is usually very nice. Probably just barely need a light jacket, get away with a sweater, maybe boots. In spring, we usually wear mostly gym shoes because we've been wearing boots all. Thanks for joining Periscope. But here, cheers, shout out to winter and spring. Cheers. Cheers to spring, right? Because I'm like, whatever. I'm like, what? Right? I'm literally like, what? Because I really don't know if this is ever going to be. Is this going to be spring? Maybe not. Okay. So I look forward to fall then, where the air gets crispy and so on. Nah, I'll take summer for a while. I'll take summer. Could do with a little bit of that. I went, yesterday I was in the backyard and I was like, I really want to get started on putting the plants out and all that kind of stuff. And I can't seem to move forward. I mean, I thought I would have started this week. And then the handyman was like, well, it's gonna snow later this week. And I was like, whatever, just so whatever-ish, whatever. But you know something? Guess what? I live in Michigan, which means we don't get hurricanes, tornadoes barely, right? And so I don't have, as we go through this summer, we don't have to worry about that kind of weather. But for those of you who live in Florida, though, I bet you're laughing at me when during winter when we're like -10 degrees and it's a polar vortex, and this is us just, it's such a dangerous walk from a building to a motor vehicle, right? You wonder what happens to people who have to stand at the bus stop. And I've often wondered, why is it that bus stops are not heated though? Have you ever wondered about that? Why don't they have an enclosure and then a sliding door? So during winter, it's heated. I don't know. Some things just make you wonder when they would think of doing stuff like that. Yeah, because how do people get around? And then you think about people like the homeless who sleep under bridges. I mean, there are people who literally live under bridges. That's where they live. I think it was earlier this year, last fall, before it got really, during the summer, I noticed that at 8 Mile and Telegraph, whenever you're coming from Telegraph South, or if you're coming from Telegraph North, and there was this man who lived under the bridge, like he had a whole clothing section over there. It was just crazy. Hey, good morning, Peter. Did you ever say, Peter Concrete, did you ever say hi to your sisters? Steve Balfour. Hey, how you doing? Congratulations. I saw on Facebook where you opened a guest house in Montego Bay. It was the View, and you now call it the Balfour Guest House. I had some good times at the View. Some good hanging out times. Great to see you. Great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody. How are you all doing? Well, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, last night they're continuing this arrest of Julian Assange, and it's something to look at because it's like, okay, I thought, anyway, people who come, it is what it is. So anyway, I'm not even gonna say anything because that is such a cut and dry case. I am just saying, you don't mess with the government, right? You leave the government to do the government's business alone, right? But here in Michigan, we have a particular situation, right? And the situation that we're talking about is today we're going to meet with the governor. And we're going to talk about, one of the things on my agenda is human trafficking, obviously. That's what we're going to try to get to. It's something she's passionate about. She wanted to say something about it. And but I also wanted to talk about DAPCEP. DAPCEP is a program. I'm sure it's available in other cities. It's probably called a different name, but it's for children in urban communities. It's a STEM program, so it's a science technology program designed for children in urban communities. The current lieutenant governor of Michigan graduated onto that program. Well, the governor has withdrawn the funding for that program. And I'm pretty sure she must have a very good reason. I'm pretty sure she must know very much why. So it's one of the things that when we it's going to be much later this evening because we have to drive to Muskegon, Michigan. Anybody knows where Muskegon is? Look it up on a map. Yeah, so it's like a 3.5 hour ride. I could almost drive to Indiana or Ohio in the meantime, right? So pray for us as we drive out there today. Human trafficking will never stop. That's true. Why? Tell me why. Human trafficking will never stop. Say why. Tell me. Because there is a demand. There is a demand, right? There is a demand. That's why human trafficking will never stop. There is a demand. So what we're trying to do, we can't end the demand because human nature is as it is. So as long as there is a demand for people to want to have sex, and then they want to have sex outside of contextual relationships or contextual their partnerships, their stated intimate partnerships, human trafficking is not going to end, right? But what we can do is the people who emerge from trafficking provide services for them. That's what we can do, right? And if someone is an active participant in trafficking and at some point in his life wants to change, then we want to provide them with the means to do so. And I say that with a face. Like, haven't met him yet, haven't met the guy who thinks like that, but there is a program downriver in Michigan that provides services to John. So instead of criminalizing them when they find them engaged in activity with minors and with people who are sex slaves, what they do is they take them through a rehab program, sort of. No success rate there. No success rate there. No success rate there. They go through it because it's mandated by the courts, but so they don't have to, be criminalized. But no success. So we're going to talk about those things later today. But I wanted to talk about something that caught my attention. This whole Nipsey Hussle situation is trending across social media. And whilst many of us have never heard of him, his community certainly did, right? His community of South Los Angeles, around the Crenshaw area, they certainly knew of him because his impact was there. He lived and he earned it. He worked for it. He did stuff for that community. But we talked yesterday about how he had never married his longtime girlfriend. So now that the law, according to the law, unless her name is in the will, and unless she is listed as cohabiter on the property, she cohabited. If she is listed as a co-owner of anything, then she's fine. But outside of that, she's not getting anything, right? So she posted a picture to her Instagram feed showing that she had tattooed his likeness to her arm. And in the caption, she said, "Real love never dies." And I'm putting this out there for those of us. Most of us have been, have loved more than once, right? Different seasons of your life, you love different people, yes, and different ways, yes, right? Or some great affection, perhaps feel some great affection towards others, and it takes time for you to realize that real love is love. So would you tattoo your likeness? Somebody, you think is the love of your life in this season, would you tattoo his likeness on your chest, on your boobs, on your arms? Would you do that? And what if you break up? So Wade McCree is chiming in. Wade says, demand will drive the industry exactly like narcotics and illegal gambling. You are correct. The solution has to exist at all levels, not just arrest and prosecution, but protection and prevention for those poor exploited victims. Thank you, Wade. Talking about human trafficking. Yes, of course. There is, in most situations, most of these dilemmas that we face as a community, The answer is never just one answer. The solution is never just one. It's never just contained to one. It's usually multifaceted and multi-pronged. So it takes all kinds of people to sit at a table with their varying perspectives to come up with the solutions for this problem, especially human trafficking. As a border state, which Michigan is, we're surrounded by water and we're connected to another country, Canada. And especially in the Detroit metropolitan region, we experience a great deal of human trafficking. For some reason, maybe because of the passage to Canada, we see a lot of people coming from a lot of, other states. I mean, I've had people from Alaska, people from Nevada, people from Arizona, right? Just passing through Michigan, and you're like, how on God's green earth the trafficker took them here and then left them on a street corner? And then they get picked up, or sometimes they get picked up, more often than not, they get picked up by law enforcement, placed in the system, and then they're abandoned by the pimp. Yeah, he's not sticking around because he get involved with the police, right? So he goes and the victim is left. And so as a community, we have to provide services to those who are left behind. It's everywhere in every city across America already. So wherever there is poverty, you are going to find human trafficking, right? We've talked about trafficking before. Yeah, there are three parts to trafficking: labor, organ, and sex trafficking, right? So in this particular instance, I'm talking about sex, human sex trafficking, right? Another time I'll talk about labor, how people are transported here. And this is why the Department of Justice is very careful in what it describes to be human trafficking and what it is. It's modern slavery. People are enforced. And if those of us who are in the industry are constantly appalled at how trafficking, especially those of us who are people of color and who have a history, who have studied slavery, right? And we have a history of being connected to being descendants of slaves. When you read what human trafficking is like, it resembles the playbook of slavery. I think they picked up the book and read it. I swear to you, it is unbelievable what victims discuss and what they tell us that happens, because we don't know what happens until the victim discloses. So when a victim emerges and tells us, that's when we get the full picture and the full story of what goes on. Just yesterday, I got a phone call. I won't say from where, right? And I was responding to a message, to a missed call. I didn't know who it was, so I called it back, right? When I called it back, it was the police in another county, right? And when I said, okay, somebody called me, and they're like, it's not us, it's another city. They said, you need to talk to the folks over in another city. There's a big problem over there right now. Right at that moment yesterday, right after the show ended, right after I got off my broadcast here, there was a problem in another city. Wherever there are hotels, there's trafficking. And they had done something, and it was just a big mess, right? So it's the exploitation of people is what is motivating us. What we're seeing is the exploitation of people, especially children. People who are 15 and 14 and 13 and 12. I don't want to talk about it because I can't. I don't want to talk about it because it's, in a lot of cases, sometimes the family does this to their children. They send their children out to have sex with random men, grown men, having sex with children in an effort to alleviate some financial burden. I have a 16-year-old daughter, right? I have two daughters. I have a 16-year-old daughter. For the life of me, Wade knows me, I will hurt someone, right? And I'm thinking of nieces I have who are young, who are younger than 16. I'm pretty sure that I would be one of those you would see on the 6 o'clock news, right? But these things happen, the exploitation of people, of vulnerable people. So they take advantage of their vulnerability. A person called me back in, I think it was in the fall, and she was desperate because she had encountered a situation where a young boy had been the mother had been evicted. She lost her job. She couldn't stay in the apartment where they lived, and she was evicted. And in the eviction process, they didn't have anywhere else to live. So it was getting colder. So they took refuge in an abandoned home on Detroit's east side. And the mother couldn't find work. So she was running out of money. So what they did was they would go to the McDonald's and buy stuff that would last them all day because they had no running water in the place and they had no heat to cook anything. So a woman who is a social worker was at the McDonald's and she noticed this child. And because of her work, she could tell that something was wrong. So after a few, the second time she went, she developed a conversation with him. So she bought food. So she said, "How many hamburgers do you want?" He needed 8. That's when she knew something was wrong. There were 3 children plus the mother, him being part of the 3 children, right? So she said, "Okay, why don't I buy you more than you need, more than the 8, so you'll have something to eat later on?" So he agreed. So she bought. So the next day she went back there knowing he would be there. And she said, this time she said, "Instead of buying you that, why don't I just give you some resources? Can I talk to your mother?" You know what the child said? He said, "No, I'm 13 years old. If you talk to my mother, they're going to take us away from her. So no, I don't want that." And she said, "No, I won't let that happen." And he said, "Yes, ma'am, it will happen." And he said, "As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do, I am 13 years old. I'm a boy. I'm going to stand on the corner and do what I have to do to support my family. I can't let my mother lose her children." The woman said she was so heartbroken. She went back to the McDonald's a couple days later and he could not be found. She had tracked him and driven around him to find the house. When she eventually found the house, they had vacated the premises. So she said, "I lost him." So she was so she's a social worker. Of course, she's trained in this, but she was so lost. She needed some support because, everybody needs support. When she told me the story, I'm like, the only thing we can do is just continue looking, just keep driving around and continue looking. Don't get the police involved unless you know someone on the police force and they would do this, outside of showing up with guns blazing or whatever to extract the children. But whatever resources that you can find to help them, because the child is right. The mother would lose custody of her children, and clearly that was not the outcome that the family wanted. But do you see what his thought process was at 13? Was he himself, the child, was going to stand on the street corner so that he could help provide for his family. And this is what we're saying. It's vulnerable people who are being exploited. Do you see where I'm coming from? Vulnerable people who have no resource, no means, no nothing. Trust me, these things happen. As much as you and I can sit back at home right now and you have the luxury of having the internet because you're watching me, right? You have the luxury of having your own device connected to the internet. Right now, I have like 3 devices, right? Plus this, right? So you have the wherewithal and the means to be able to feel safe. You never have to worry about this happening to your children. In the meantime, there are vulnerable people for whom this is happening. Human trafficking is real, and human sex trafficking is perhaps the most horrific one you can come across. The violation and the destruction that takes place with the individual. I'm covering my face because I'm remembering the stories of victims. You hear it. It comes at you. You hear it. And you listen to how broken people are and what has happened to them and the reasons why they end up being there. Most people who were trafficked some were taken as children. That means they had no consent, because a person under 16 cannot consent to anything, right? So they were taken against their will. Sometimes the parents are drugged. Yeah, I have heard of that more than anything. We had one girl once who her father at 8 years old told her to go stand on the street corner to provide for the family. Her father. She was not black. No, she was not Hispanic. She was not Native American or anything. She was white. They lived in Alaska. She was 22 when she ended up with us. She had traveled every state in the union, had been through every state, been through every kind of worst case scenario. They have been dehumanized. They've been treated like animals. They've been placed in scenes to have all kinds of horrific sexual acts under the guise of sex. Some of the stuff that has happened doesn't sound like sex to me, right? So when I say that, hi, when I say that people uh when I say that these things happen, trust me, they happen. So this is why when I ask that you go to our website, the exodusfoundation.com, obviously I cannot state in detail what we do because I have to protect victims, right? I have to protect their stories and their what they do. But I can tell you that we are doing what we can. We've been working with one particular individual for weeks, for months now, who is under the weight of so much pain and burden, she can't even begin to extricate herself because she couldn't come forward. She couldn't accept what had happened. When you encounter these folks, invariably they have personality disorders. They emerge not normal. Trust me. We had one girl who had been sexually violated from she was 4. So she's been sitting with therapists. She told the therapist, "What are you going to tell me now? I've been going to therapist since I was 5." She's been violated. So they have lost their sense of connection to what is good about humanity. And so this is why we myself and others, we work to create awareness around what human trafficking is. It's not just, here's the thing. You're going to ask me the question, what's the difference between trafficking and prostitution? Prostitution is when someone chooses to stand on the street corner. Yeah? That's prostitution. But a trafficked victim, a person who is trafficked, was coerced into doing it. They were promised something in return, right? Some of them were taken and promised something in return. But in the case of sex trafficking, they were coerced into it. They were forced into doing stuff in exchange for goods and services. They were told, if you go here, I'm going to give you a job. And in the job, you're to go to this man's house and clean his house. But when she shows up, the man is expecting sex. But she wasn't told that sex was part of it. So she has to do what he says because the person who is controlling her will kill her. She's threatened. She's beaten. Her identification documents are confiscated. So she's nobody. She's not a person. She doesn't exist. Their personal property is removed, which is part of the dehumanization that takes place. And so what happens is that invariably in these scenarios, people emerge very damaged, very victimized, and very damaged. Sometimes one of the things that we as providers of services have observed is that people don't know the extent to which they're damaged. It's usually up to us to point it out, and then they're resistant because the human nature kicks in that says, how could I have allowed that to happen to me? Or how did that happen to me? I have control over myself. Or sometimes especially with younger women, they will say, he loves me, because the Romeo pimp or the gorilla pimp kicks in and she thinks he loves her. That's why she does what she does, because she's in love. So my posture and the organization that I manage, the Exodus Foundation, you can find us online at the exodusfoundation.com. Our posture is, we're not going to save the whole world, but for those who choose to leave, we want to provide them with a safe space for them while they recover. That's our goal. Provide them with somewhere safe that they can sit down and not think about where to eat, what to do, and so on. One of the biggest challenges we have is with these girls who they're so used to being transient. In fact, we can't introduce new people into the environment to them because they're so used to being on the move constantly that they don't know what to do. When you introduce some level of normalcy to them, they're like, are you kidding me? You mean I have to sit here all night? Because they're used to being up all night and they want to sleep during the day because that's their body cycle. That's what they're used to. And they're used to so being victimized and controlled that even when you take them out in public and for them to interact with the public in a normal way, they don't know how to, right? You could see evidence of enforcement on them. It was quite the thing to observe as a human being, to see how other human beings exploit others and demean others and dehumanize people. I came, I touched people whose lives, who were slaves, who were enslaved for many years. One woman was 42. It took place in her life from the time she was 7 until she was 42. Do you see what I mean? All she had children for the trafficker and the traffickers, and the children were taken from her. She didn't know where her children were, her biological children. Those children were part of the trafficking ring. They were taken by the trafficker and perhaps placed somewhere else. This is why we call it slavery. Do you see now why I say they took the playbook of slavery, historical slavery, where blacks were taken from Africa, kidnapped, and brought to the Americas to work for free, right, and enslaved, is the same way in which these folks are treated. I am so so blessed to be a part of bringing services to folks who otherwise would not have. So when I ask you to go to our website, theexodusfoundation.com, and be a blessing to others, it's because we do what we do. We've been doing it. Elaine Flowers and I partnered with doing this, and we did it out of pocket for a couple of years, and we've gotten a few donations along the way. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, and so it gives us an opportunity to go out and explain the evils of it. That what I focus on is the trauma, the emergence of individuals who emerge, and the trauma they experienced while in captivity. So when they emerge, they can't function. It takes years for them to adjust. Of course, they introduce all kinds of therapists, but there is a place in the mind where healing comes from. And the mind has to determine whether it wants to be healed or not. Have you ever seen someone in a coma, right? If you've ever seen someone in a coma, what you find is that they tell you that the last thing that goes when someone is at that point is their hearing. They can hear everything. So be careful what you talk about when you go into the hospital and someone is unconscious. They can hear. They hear it. They just can't respond, right? Because the part of the brain that it controls motor functions and controls cognitive recognition and so on does not function, but they can hear everything, right? So if you've ever seen people in a coma, that when they can hear you, but it's like it doesn't register. Well, that's how trafficking victims are. When they emerge, it's like that part of their lives, they were in a coma. They heard stuff, but trying to get them to function now in what we can, in normal ways, to react normally is the biggest challenge that we experience. It's quite the thing. It's quite the thing. It's quite the thing. So I encourage you to go to my website, theexodusfoundation.com, see what we do and be a blessing. Help us to help these folks who come out of it. It was quite the thing yesterday. They're having a serious issue, and there is a city in one of our northern suburbs. It's unbelievable. In the parking lot, young people, young children are being exploited. Young children, it's heartbreaking. Young children. So the demand exists for people to want to have sex with people who are young because they're vulnerable, and it gives them some kind of control, or some power thrill or whatever, to see what they're doing, right? So thank you so much for joining and for giving me an opportunity to explain what we do, right? Of course, I'm a writer. I'm an author. I write books, and I'm a speaker. So I go out and I talk about this kind of thing and others. I motivate and inspire people in addition to talking about trafficking, right? But I also write books. So go to my website and see what we do. Which brings me to this, that I wanted to talk about love. If you notice, we've been talking about love and relationships for some time because love is an important part of life. But yesterday was Nipsey Hussle's funeral, and his longtime girlfriend posted a picture to Instagram um, of her of her tattoo, where she tattooed his likeness onto her arm. Right, a few years ago. Do you remember Eva Longoria of Desperate Housewives? You remember her? Well, she had tattooed herself, her then husband's likeness onto her arm. You remember that? And then they broke up. Right? And it was like she tattooed him in her secret place in her genitalia. And I'm just like, and I'm just like, someone is asking me if I have a boyfriend. So I'm just like, would you tattoo your love onto your arm? Me? No. No. I simply won't. What if you break up? That's my first question. The process of removing a tattoo, from what I understand, is very painful, right? And I don't know that I have to prove my love to you or prove to the world that I love you, that I have to walk around with your face on my arm or on my leg or in the small of my back. That's a different thing. They call that by a different name, right? Don't they? The one in the small of your back is called a different name. Right? But would you do that? Here's the reason why that is. In the moment of grief, for her, Lauren London, I'm talking about, she's in grief right now and loss. So she's experiencing a great loss. The love of her life, her boyfriend, her fairy tale love story has come crashing to an end. No one wants to place that, to be faced in that debacle. That's a very serious thing. But so now she's in grief, and this is her response to grief. It's the mind's way of saying, I will never forget him. Does she know objectively that she has to move on? Yeah, the reality is she has to move on. That love is tattooed on my heart. I don't need it anywhere else. That's right, Dr. Simpson. Say it loud. It's tattooed on my heart. I don't need to wear it on my skin. Isn't that true? Because think about it. Think about it. Irene, think about it. I just want to ask you guys to chime in and tell me. Seriously, think about it. You love someone. We love, right? But isn't it enough that it's here? Why do I need to put it here to prove it? Because now, in her case, I mean, some other guy has come out against her because you know how that is. But think about it. Would you do that? Is it required? If your partner asks you, if you love me, tattoo my face onto you, would you do it? Love is so strong, Harriet. Yes. Yes, love is very strong. Of course, love is very strong. Love is very strong. But here's the thing, Michael. Guess what? The same guy she's professing to love so much, he didn't marry her. So now that he's dead, she has no access to his assets, no support, no residuals from his music. Nothing. Nada. Zilch. Time to move on. She has to if she wants to live. Not just for the process of grief that she's obviously going to go through, but because she's young and life is going to propel her and life is going to come and force her into making a decision. Do you see what I mean? Is love powerful? Unbelievably so. So you're gonna tattoo Kiki Palmer on your arm. Okay. I can't fight you. That's how you feel. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. I'm just asking, is it a requirement for love? Because the truth is, I don't know that I wouldn't. If he asked me, would I? No. I would say, baby, I love you in my heart. If I were to, Jay-Z gave them an endowment for her kids. How much is the endowment though? How much is the endowment? But do you see what I mean? Why is it that the community had to respond just to protect her so she won't go hungry? Because her net worth is not as high. His is not as high either, right? But why would should the in other words, what I'm saying is he should have been if he's a king, he should have been the king to make sure that she didn't go through this. But that's not my issue today. My issue really is, would you do that? Is it required? Because here's the thing: when we love people, love is felt, right? Love is experienced, I should say. The better word is experienced, right? And we don't choose whom we love. That's how you know it's love. It happens, right? Because it is so intrinsic and so personal, then do we need to prove it? In some cases, people require proof, especially someone who is damaged and especially someone who has been let down before. They're going to say, yeah, you love me, prove it. They might not use those words. She made great profits on a book, Harriet. 15 million? Honey, yeah, but the way they live, they spend, when you earn 15 million, your lifestyle is 30 million a year, right? You see what I'm saying? So if she made 15 million, she's spending 30. That's how life is. It's like a doctor. A doctor earns 300,000 a year. Well, his lifestyle is 600,000 a year because people expect you to put out. So you have to keep it up. So if she makes 15 million, her lifestyle is 30 million. I don't know that she makes 15 million per year. I think, and even if she does, more power to her. That's amazing. But at 15 million with 2 children at that lifestyle, she needs 30 million. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, because the kids are in private school. They have to have this. They have to have that. You have to need that to come in all the time and so on and so forth, right? 8% interest. Yeah, good luck with that. The best thing for you to do is to stash your money on some stocks that make money, right? But seriously, so the thing is, would you do that? Maybe he left her an endowment. Maybe he left her something that she can now say that is hers, but she's not telling anyone because the IRS will come looking. Because what happens with prominent folk, when people die and it's so public, right? Guess who starts looking? The IRS. There are people too who work for them. Guess what they're doing? They're like, now that you've brought that up, let me go check. And they start looking at people's tax returns and blah, blah, blah. 8% interest on a CD. Dude, I have 15 million. They're giving me more than that. I'm doing debentures. Right? But do you see what I mean? And this is why you will find that very wealthy people, what do? They don't talk. One of the things we need to learn in our community is not to live so bodaciously, not to live it out, not to be so outwards. Everything is bigger, bolder, brighter. It's like when Aretha Franklin died, this humongous funeral. All of a sudden, the IRS is in their business because now all of a sudden, whoa, those folks have money. There's some money. Did they pay all their taxes? I'm not sure they did. Let me go take a look at it. When wealthy people, very wealthy people live very discreetly, you don't even know they exist. They live in estates far from everything else. You don't see their lifestyles because you don't have access to it because you can't get near them. They do that for a reason, so that it does not attract attention. You don't want the media attention. You don't want the media, like the media was, everybody went crazy over this guy. So the media is looking for ratings. So they're going to focus on whatever you're focused on, right? And now there are other people, the tax collector, he's the first one who was like, let me take a look. Let me go scroll through all his businesses and see how much money he owes me in taxes. So very wealthy people live very discreetly, away from the limelight, away from everything else. If not, like the Kardashians, they have a battery, they have a shield of lawyers. You can't go near them. You see what I mean? So even if you think of going near them, you can't go near them. Do you see? It's lessons for all of us to learn. This public outplay and display that took place this past week with this young man who died. They call him a king. I mean, they're also referring to him as Jesus, the Messiah, for crying out loud. All of this is a lesson for all of us to learn. There are many lessons that are in that story. One of them, if you love somebody, tell them, because you never know what may happen. Reduce the arguments, reduce the quarreling. Number one. Number two, take care of your important people. Take care of your important people. Men, marry your leading lady. Yeah, marry your leading lady. Make sure you take care of her. She's the mother of your child. You love her, even if she didn't have children for you, but you are the mother. She's the love of your life. That's who you've been living with. That's who you want to be with. Marry her. Put the ring on her finger. It gives her security and stability, so the community doesn't have anything to say. She will still be honored, right? Ladies, do the same thing. Do the same thing, right? There are inherent lessons here. And for the love of God, take your business out of the news. You're going to have a funeral, have a regular funeral. Just invite a few people. We're going to respect our privacy while we mourn. Don't have this big, bodacious show-off thing. And then you have people scrutinizing. How much money did he really make? Did he really pay taxes on it? We're in their business because you put it out there. These are lessons for us to learn. Let's put this on the macro level, because that was their life. They lived publicly. Let's put this on the macro level down to me and you. Here we are. Our public displays take place on where? Social media, Facebook. I am seeing all of you post your business on Facebook, Twitter, especially Facebook and Instagram. You post your business. You just got a car. You take a picture of the car and put it up. What if you owe a bill collector something? You just moved into a new house. You put it up there. You ever thought that there are other people who are watching? You know that the IRS and the tax collectors are on here. You know that, right? You know the government is watching us. You know that, right? Okay. So some of these folks are even one night, especially at nights. One night I was scrolling through my Facebook feed. I don't know if I was bored or something. Probably, knowing me, probably watching television. And you know how that is, right? And scrolling at the same time. And somebody actually put up notice that they wanted to buy a bridge card. Do you know that is what is that? That's a fraud. No, that's a felony, I think. Right? I saw a billboard. That's a felony. They're called investigators. I went somewhere the other day and learned things that I didn't even know. That there are investigators, state investigators from the Department of Motor Vehicles who investigate. You know where they're getting a lot of their information? What you post on Facebook. So don't post your business and put your business out there, for the love of God in Christ Jesus. We need to stop that as a people. We keep putting our business out there. Don't live so bodaciously. Don't put it out there. Okay, so yesterday we were driving downtown, right? And my youngest daughter we saw this 2-seater Bentley, dark windows, and it had a vanity plate on it. I can't remember what it is. And I said to her, no doubt that's driven by a Black person. And she said, yep. I said, yeah, only a Black person would live like that. I said, white people, when they have money, they don't do that. They don't do that. They put their money in real things. They put their money in real investments, property, land, businesses. Put it in the bank. Where we go in the bank and say, look, I have $8 million cash in here. You're about to pay me some interest. How about you give me 10% on that money? And I'd give it to you for 2 years at 10%. Then after that, I take it out and put it in the Caymans. Do you see what I mean? But we live bodaciously. We put stuff, everything that we own. I drive a car that I don't pay a note on. I refuse to take out a car note. Why? When you think of the interest, when you think of the depreciation of the car, right? You think of how the value of it depreciates by 20% the minute you drive off the lot. But while the car salesman in front of you is like, well, it has this feature. Don't worry about it. We calculated it. He's talking so fast you can't get a word in edgewise. This is out of car salesman talk. The best salesperson on the planet is a car salesman. His mouth moves so fast. His mouth moves faster than a politician. You can't understand it. That's all you're hearing. Just blah, 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 blah. I swear to you, every time I do this, my kids laugh, right? But it's the truth. But we drive off the lot. and the value of the vehicle depreciates by 20% immediately. And we're paying a $900 car note. There's some people who earn up to $15,000 a month, and they're like, I can pay a car note for $1,500 a month. That's no big deal for me. I can do that. Dude, go take out a $500 car note and save the rest. And it's when you look at your bank statement at the end of the year, you're like, my God in heaven. That's a little bit much to spend on a car that depreciates in value. And that when it crashes, it still has the same effect. Still needs the oil plugs, condenser, still needs an oil change, need a filter, need a this, need a that. Isn't that the truth? My friend Wade is chiming in. I remember back in the late 70s when Ebony magazine, as well as our local, did a piece on Oakland County Black attorney Albert Hackett. The video piece concluded with Hatchet, on the balcony overlooking the indoor swimming pool in his living room. The IRS was in his behind later that same year. Of course. I kid you not. Have you noticed something? Your favorite couple are Jay-Z and Beyonce, right? You remember when 5 years ago they were in the news all day, every day, living this life, this that, this life, this yacht, and I'm just doing this and I'm just doing that. Have you noticed how they've calmed down? Someone had to talk to them. Someone told them, don't do that. Do you see Oprah doing that? You learn. Don't do that. You attract unnecessary attention. You also attract something called a congressional investigation. You don't want to do that. Be conservative. That's one of the takeaways from this debacle all this week. I don't know about putting a likeness of someone I love on my arm. I don't know that that's necessary. I think the devotion I have to my love is proof enough that I love him, right? That's really where it matters. My actions every day tell him that, right? I think that's what matters most. But if he's not here anymore, there are other ways to memorialize him. But it is what it is, right? It's going to take a while before I'm ready to move on. But eventually I will. I don't know how long, you don't know how long life will last, right? Right? Do you see where I'm coming from? So what I'm saying is, though, that is just one of the many takeaways for this week. And it's a lesson for us to learn, because I guarantee you, it never fails to happen. I have learned, tone it down. You're not going to see, there's some things, no, I don't believe, some people like to take pictures and post it. Oh, I just went shopping. Look at this that I just bought. Look at this. I can afford to buy a Louboutin shoes or whatever. First of all, brand names don't affirm me or validate me. I like good quality merchandise because it lasts longer, and I appreciate the quality of it. It won't fray, break, or so on under use. But if you think at any given moment, Harriet Kemmick is going to spend $500 on a pair of shoes, you can think again. That is never going to happen in my lifetime. I'm never going to do that. There are too many barefooted people in this city that I could go use $500 to buy them 500 pairs of shoes, that you think I'd buy a pair of shoes for myself for $500. I balk at that. Nah, that's just, that ain't going to happen ever. There are too many people who are in need. No, there are too many hungry children for me to wait. You have no idea. Sometimes we have to be afflicted with stuff so that we appreciate the value of it. And sometimes these things happen for us to look at them so we can take lessons from them and apply those lessons to our everyday lives. And in the noise that surrounded this young man's death, the noise that surrounded it, we didn't really see the lessons unless we were looking, because lessons were not what they want you to learn. It's like yesterday we were talking about, why do men not marry their leading ladies? Well, one of the things that emerged out of that conversation is that, why? Because as a culture, Black folks as a culture have been socialized to not marry. Men have been socialized to not marry their leading ladies. You know why? Where did we get that from? Because marrying does what? Strengthens the family. And if it strengthens the family, what are the benefits to the community? Hello. You got it. I see you nodding your head. So it is the intent then of the mainstream, who are made up of the people who are in the majority, to let you not think that marrying is the best way. The same guy and girl who is telling you not to get married, or who is saying, well, you have your girlfriend, you have this girlfriend, that girlfriend, that same person is going home to their wife or husband with their children. And if they're divorced, they're still taking care of their children and are embroiled in another situation where they're going to get married shortly. Think about that. The strength of the Black community is in its family. So if a Black man does not marry a Black woman whom he has children with, or whom he plans to create a union with, what happens? It disintegrates. It totally disintegrates. And when it disintegrates, it's easier to penetrate, and it's easier to lock them up, and it's easier to extract and remove them. It's easier to traffic, because there is no provision, nobody in the family to strengthen it. It takes two to keep it together. I know we tried to do it for the last 40 years because people walked away, and we tried and it didn't work. We knew at the back of our minds that it really wasn't going to work, but we had no idea the emotional strain it takes to raise a child by yourself. I'm a living witness. Some days I shook my head like, what was I thinking? I was like, Jesus, why did this have to happen to me? I didn't choose this way, right? Do you see what I'm saying? So we have to contextualize. So it's great that he had this grand funeral and this big grand funeral, but he didn't marry her. That was the one thing that would have legitimized her. And she's responding to this communal outpouring of oh, we love him. But the person whom he said he loved, he did not honor her. When the funeral was over, the funeral is over. Life goes on. He's beneath the ground now forever. He's never coming back up. But she is living, and she has to walk through for the rest of this day, tomorrow, and in the days and weeks to come, the fact that she has no legitimate claim to anything, if her name was never written on anything. You see where I'm coming from? And this, when you look at this, so you look at this and you're like, whoa. The real deal is, this is a problem that is pervasive throughout the Black community. A few years ago, I worked in healthcare. I've told you that. One of the stories that came to me was this man who was in his 70s, right? And he had lived with his lady for more than 40 years. The children were grown. It was the daughter who was telling me the story of her parents. And he never married her. Then he got sick. She had no access. She couldn't make any decision because she was not the wife. She was in her 60s. He was in his 70s. He refused to get married. When he realized that he needed to do something, by the time he realized he was too sick, he had diabetes. And you know, when people don't go to the doctor frequently, the diabetes had become a complication. He died. She did not get one dime from his pension nor his Social Security. I kid you not. I say that to a male friend of mine yesterday. He told me some women are too thief. Thief. Well, we can look at it this way, Karen. It works. It works on both ends, right? At the same time that men say that about women, women also say that about men. But I think as partners, we need to come together and understand that we need to protect the interests of one another. And the best way to do that is in a committed legal manner. You see what I mean? Conversely speaking, on the other hand, I have heard the story of a man who married his lady, right? They had a child together, and after 17 years, it took him 17 years, he married her. Within 5 years of marrying her, he started to get sick. And he lived in Canada, and I don't want to get specific. He lived in another country, and he lived here, right? So he was going to get pension from both countries. Well, because she is here and her nationality is here, guess what happens? She didn't have She didn't have a really have a, when she went to get his, he died. He was supposed to name her as a beneficiary on his pension in Canada. Guess what? He had never removed the name of his girlfriend. No matter what she said to him after they got married, he never removed it. Up until the day he died, the girlfriend's name was, she didn't find out until after his death that the girlfriend's name was still on his pension in Canada. And because of the beneficiary is as stated. If you don't have a beneficiary and you have a wife, then it goes to the wife. But if you name a beneficiary, tough luck, it's going to that person, right? Okay, so this man has 6 children with 5 baby mothers. He'll be 49-year-old this year, and he doesn't even have a foundation. You know, it's like this thing, Karen. You know what I think? I think women start competing with one another, honestly. So you meet some guy, right, who has 5 children already. Why are you going to be the 6th one or the 7th one? You see, there's a pattern there, right? So I think we women, we start trying to compete to see if we're going to be the one to land him. We're going to be the one to change him and make him an honest man. It depends on the man. It really does depend on the individual. I have found that these things are highly subjective. It depends on the individual, right? But the truth of the matter is, it does not belie the fact, though, that as a culture and as a community, we really need to pay attention, right? To those we say we love, protect them, even your children. I say that to myself, write a living trust, write out a will, even if it is 2 words on a piece of paper, it could be handwritten. The most powerful wills, by the way, are the handwritten ones. Did you know that? Right? Those are the ones that cause a whole lot of damage. Right? Write out something that says what you intend. So even if, okay, so let's say you live with your long-term lady and you don't want to get married, put her in the will. Put her name on stuff. So if anything happens, and stuff does happen, folks, let's just be clear. It makes no sense we live in a world where we pretend that nothing happens. Stuff happens. Right? Stuff happens. So let me see. Are you enjoying this? Are you enjoying this? Listen to this. Very true. The youngest is 7 years. He's 49. He's trending, though. I guarantee you, by the time that man is 51, he will have another 1 or 2. I heard a story recently. This didn't happen here. It's a man in Africa. He's a diplomat. He has 5 wives and 48 children. That's gonna blow your mind. It literally made me stop. And I said, shoot. And I come from a large family where my father has multiple children. So let me put that out there. So I'm not throwing shade at anybody when my paternity is just as speculative as anyone else, right? So let me just put that out there. My father had a lot of children, a whole lot of children by multiple women. I am one of many, right? And it's the weirdest thing because some of us look exactly like one another, even though we have different mothers, right? But here I am. So I heard the story of a man from a country in Africa, Senegal. He's a diplomat. He has 5 wives, 3 who are African, 1 white and 1 Asian. That was it, right? And 48 children. 48 children. He started a whole village. He has his own village going on. And you're like, darn, what does it take? But he was living out the edict that says, be fruitful and multiply. Do you think that's what that was? What if all of us, hey, have you ever thought about that? What if all of us decided to live out that, to say we are fruitful and multiply? Have you guys ever thought about that? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about it? What if all of us decided that we were going to be fruitful and multiply accordingly? What kind of world would there be? We couldn't feed anybody. There are 7+ billion people on the planet. In most parts of the world, we're struggling to provide people with drinking water, with fresh running water. and food for them to consume. So if all of us were to live this out and to be fruitful and multiply, what would happen? Talk about it. Talk about it. What would happen? It couldn't work, right? Could not work. This is why sometimes when you see people having struggles with having children, you're like, is there a bigger agenda here? There must be a bigger agenda here than maybe you shouldn't have it, you shouldn't have it, you shouldn't have it, you shouldn't have, because you have to control the population, right? I don't see any of you laughing or saying anything, but think about it. It's true. One man with 48 children, one man, he has his own village going on. So it makes you wonder. He's now living with a current wife, right? So the other previous wives, you're wondering, did he what do they get if anything happens? Your fruitful is long gone. Right? One can only surmise, Karen. God bless you. Right? But think about it. It's the strangest thing ever. When you look at this, and it makes you wonder. I'm just like, I won't even touch that. But think about it. I am saying the conversation is never going to end where we have to make some sort of way. I don't know, even if you choose not to get married, because maybe some people are saying marriage is not for everyone. Make your confessions known. State your requests. Write it out on a piece of paper. A piece of paper is more powerful. When my mother died, we found out that she had a handwritten will. Now, here in the US, she told us what her instructions were and she wrote those out. Those were notarized and blah, blah, blah. But when she had gone back to Montego Bay in the winter of 2016, she wrote out a handwritten will. No, listen to me. When she was dying, I remember her saying that I wrote on a piece of paper and that paper is more powerful and it will speak. And I was like, Mom, what are you talking about? When they sent me a copy of the handwritten will, I was rolling. Right? She was clear about what she wanted. And I'm like, did she know this was coming down the pike when she wrote this? Right? I see nothing wrong with it, especially if the tattoo is meant to represent the impact, love, guidance, and importance of the role the person played in your life. Doesn't matter if you all break up or they pass away, if that tat is representing the importance. I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay. That's a good way to look at it. You see nothing wrong with it because it represents a moment in time when you were into this and when that person was your everything. Okay, that's a reasonable thing to say. That's reasonable. Yeah, I like that. Someone else is saying, my nan has 18 children, 6 died young, so there's 3 before and 15. Wow. Yeah. So in talking about the question of the tattoo representing your love, if it represents the importance at the time, within a time, you're telling everybody that for a moment or during this part of my life, this is the most important person to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's reasonable. That's a reasonable thing to say. That's a reasonable thing to say. There is a woman named Eva Longoria, though. She felt that way about her husband, and then he left her for someone else. So she said she had to go remove the tattoo that she had placed on her private parts of his name. She had tattooed his name onto her private parts. And when he left her for someone else, she caught him cheating. So the marriage was over. So she had to go remove the tattoo from her private place. I'm just saying, look down the road. I'm not saying you're entering the relationship anticipating that it will end. So that's not the point. I'm just saying, in the event that it does, and you have to look at this tattoo. Okay. I would paint it over. Can I paint my skin? Can I paint myself? Can I put paint on it? I'll paint it until I get it out. Or what if I'm angry with him? And I have to look at his face while I'm angry. Oh, I would paint it. I would seriously paint it. I don't know. You guys are making me laugh. Time is up. I've been here chatting with you all and not realizing time is up. Time's up. Time's up. I gotta go. This message has been a blessing to you. Go to my website, harrietkamak.com, as well as go to the exodusfoundation.com and make a donation to what we do. We're a 501c3 organization, which means that all deductions to us are tax deductible. That means the IRS knows we exist. So go to the exodusfoundation.com, click on contribute, and help us be a blessing as we continue to provide services to victims of trafficking. And talking about this tattooing, one of the things that traffickers are doing to their victims, they're branded. So they tattoo their label, their brand, their logo onto victims. And the latest thing is that they're now finding ways to implant a chip so they can monitor the person. So these girls walking around thinking, oh, he loves me, because that's what they have. Sometimes that's what people tell themselves to tolerate what they go through. So talking about tattooing, they also do it in trafficking as well. So go to my website, theexodusfoundation.com, and make a donation to help me continue to provide these services that we do. Thank you so much, everybody. It is Friday. Have a great weekend. What are you all going to do? It's not time to go out on the boat yet, is it? Not in Michigan. You will die of cold. Make sure you come back and join us. Have a great weekend, everybody. Be blessed. Have a great, great weekend. Bye, Facebook. Bye. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh Lord and Jesus.